The knock came just after 9 p.m., 3 slow, uneven taps like the person on the other side wasn't sure they had the right door, or the right to be there at all. Margaret froze halfway to the kitchen. No one visited her this late. No one visited her, period. Another knock. She wiped her hands on her sweater, her heart already doing something strange, something it hadn't done in years. Hope. Dangerous, irrational hope. Coming, she said, though her voice didn't sound like hers. She opened the door. And for a moment, time didn't just slow down, it folded. The man standing there was old. Fragile. His shoulders slightly bent like life had been pressing down on him for decades. But his eyes. Those eyes didn't belong to a stranger. Margaret's breath caught. Daniel? The name escaped her lips before her mind could stop it. The man swallowed hard. His hands trembled at his sides. Hi, Maggie. And just like that, 40 years crashed into the present. Cut the music. Because if you blink, you'll miss it. This is where everything changes. Margaret stepped back, not inviting him in, not shutting the door either. Just stuck between disbelief and something far more dangerous. You. She started, then stopped. Tried again. You're not supposed to be here. Daniel gave a weak smile. I figured that much. Awkward. Painfully awkward. Like two people who once knew each other's thoughts now didn't know where to place their hands. She studied his face, searching for the young man she once loved. The one who promised her forever, and then disappeared like a magician with terrible timing. You look, she began. Old? He offered. Like a ghost, she finished. That landed. For a second, neither of them spoke. Then he glanced down at the small suitcase by his feet. I wasn't sure if you'd open the door. Margaret let out a quiet, almost bitter laugh. I wasn't sure either. And yet, here they were. Now pause for a second, because this is the part where most people would slam the door, right? 40 years. No calls. No explanation. Just silence. But Margaret? Margaret had been waiting. Not actively, not in a sit by the window every day kind of way. But in the quiet spaces. The untouched parts of her life. The parts she never let anyone else fill. And that's the problem with unfinished stories. They don't stay buried. She finally stepped aside. Come in. Daniel hesitated, like crossing that doorway meant crossing into everything he had lost. Then he walked in. The house was exactly how he imagined it would be. Simple. Quiet. Too quiet. His eyes landed on a small table in the corner. A stack of old letters tied neatly with a ribbon. His letters. Or at least, the ones she received. Margaret noticed where he was looking and quickly turned away. Sit, she said, motioning to the couch. He lowered himself slowly, like even sitting required effort. You live alone? He asked. She didn't answer immediately. Does it matter? She replied. Fair. There was a long pause. The kind that screams louder than words. Finally, she turned to face him. Why are you here, Daniel? Simple question. Brutal wait. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. I've been trying to find you, he said quietly. Margaret's expression didn't change. For 40 years? She asked. There it was. The first crack. He nodded, but even that looked like it cost him something. I tried to come back, he said. I really did. She folded her arms. Funny, she said, her voice steady but sharp. Because from where I was standing, you didn't try at all. And just like that, the past wasn't past anymore. Daniel didn't argue. That was the first thing that unsettled her. Most people, when accused of disappearing for 40 years, would defend themselves. Raise their voice. Throw excuses around like confetti. Daniel just sat there, taking it. I deserve that, he said quietly. Margaret blinked. That wasn't the response she expected. Oh, you deserve a lot more than that, she shot back. You left. No warning. No explanation. Just gone. I know. You wrote letters, then suddenly nothing. Do you have any idea what that does to someone? His gaze dropped to the floor. Yeah. I think I do. Now that irritated her even more. No, you don't, she snapped. Because you weren't the one waiting. That word hung in the air. Waiting. It sounded heavier now than it ever had before. Daniel looked up, his eyes glistening, not dramatically, just enough to make it uncomfortable. I thought about you every day, he said. Margaret laughed, but there was no humor in it. Don't, she said. Don't do that. Don't come in here with lines like that after 4 decades. I'm not lying. That doesn't make it better. Silence again. The kind that digs under your skin. Margaret walked to the window, folding her arms tightly like she needed to physically hold herself together. You don't just disappear on someone you love, she said, softer now, but somehow more painful. Not without a reason. Daniel swallowed hard. There was a reason, he said. She turned quickly. Then say it. And just like that, tension spiked. Because this was it, right? The moment we've all been waiting for. Why did he leave? Why didn't he come back? Why did he let 40 years pass like it was nothing? Daniel opened his mouth. Then stopped. Not because he didn't want to speak, but because something in his face shifted. A flicker of pain. Real pain. I will, he said. I just need a minute. Margaret stared at him, disbelief written all over her face. A minute? She repeated. You've had 40 years, Daniel. I know. Then what's one more minute going to fix? He didn't answer. Instead, he leaned back slightly, closing his eyes for a brief second like he was steadying himself. That's when she noticed it. His hands. They were shaking. Not subtly. Not nervously. Something deeper. Something wrong. Her anger hesitated. Just for a second. You okay? She asked, the question slipping out before she could stop it. He forced a small smile. I've had better days. That wasn't reassuring. Margaret frowned, studying him more closely now. You look. She started, then stopped. Like I shouldn't be here? He finished. No, she said slowly. Like you barely made it here. That landed harder than anything else. Daniel looked away. I had to see you, he said. Simple. Direct. Dangerous. Margaret shook her head, trying to push back the wave of emotion creeping in. Why now? She asked. After all this time, why today? He hesitated. Again. And that hesitation? It wasn't random. It was loaded. I ran out of time, he said. Now hold on. That line right there? That's not something you just gloss over. Ran out of time? What does that even mean? Margaret narrowed her eyes. What is that supposed to mean? She asked. Daniel didn't answer immediately. Instead, his gaze drifted back to the table, to those letters. You kept them, he said softly. She stiffened. That's not the point. It kind of is. No, it's not, she snapped. The point is, you vanished. And now you show up with half-answers and cryptic statements like we're in some kind of mystery novel. Daniel gave a faint, tired chuckle. Feels like one, doesn't it? She didn't smile. Stop avoiding the question, she said firmly. Why now? He looked at her. Really looked at her this time. And whatever he saw, it broke something in him. Because if I didn't come now, he said quietly, I might never get the chance again. Pause. Let that sit. Because now the story just changed. And before we go any further, if you're already feeling this tension, this frustration, this need to know what really happened, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Because trust me, this story? It doesn't unfold the way you think it will. Not even close. Now back to Margaret, who's standing there, staring at a man she loved, and a truth she's not ready to hear. Margaret didn't like the way that sounded. Not one bit. I might never get the chance again, she repeated slowly. Daniel, stop talking in riddles. I'm not trying to, he said. I just don't know how to say it without. Without what? Hurting me? She cut in. That ship sailed in 1984. That one hit. He nodded, accepting it like a man who knew he had no defense left. Fair enough, he said. Another pause. But this one felt different. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, fingers laced together like he was trying to hold himself steady. You deserve the truth, he said. Even if it's late. Even if it changes nothing. Margaret didn't respond. She just stood there, arms still crossed, but her eyes were softer now. Not forgiving. Not yet. But listening. I left because of the job, Daniel began. You remember that? I remember, she said. You said it was temporary. It was supposed to be. So what happened? He exhaled slowly. I didn't make it there. Margaret frowned. What do you mean you didn't? I was in an accident, he said. Just like that. No dramatic build-up. No music cue. Just truth, dropped quietly in the middle of the room. Her expression shifted, confusion replacing anger. What kind of accident? Car crash, he said. 3 days after I left. She blinked. And before you ask, yeah, I survived, he added with a weak half-smile. Barely. Margaret took a step closer without realizing it. That doesn't explain 40 years, Daniel. I know, he said. It's just where it started. He rubbed his hands together, like even talking about it was dragging him back there. I was in the hospital for months, he continued. Broken ribs, head injury, the works. And when I finally woke up fully... He stopped. Margaret leaned in slightly. What? I didn't remember anything. Silence. Not the awkward kind. Not the angry kind. The kind that hits you in the chest and stays there. What do you mean, you didn't remember? She asked quietly. I mean exactly that, he said. No past. No names. No you. That one landed harder than anything else he'd said. Margaret's lips parted, but no words came out. I didn't even know my own name at first, he added. Took weeks before anything started coming back. And even then, it was pieces. Faces without context. Places without meaning. And me? She asked, almost afraid of the answer. He looked at her. I remembered you last. That stung. Not because it was cruel, but because it felt honest. Margaret looked away, blinking quickly. Of course, she whispered. Why would I be first? I didn't choose the order, he said gently. That's just how it came back. She didn't respond. I started writing letters again, he continued, as soon as I remembered enough. But I didn't know if the address was still right. Didn't know if you were still there. Didn't even know if you'd moved on. Margaret let out a slow breath. I didn't move, she said. Not once. He nodded, pain flickering across his face. I figured that out too late. Now here's the thing. This is where most stories would wrap it up neatly. Accident. Memory loss. Tragic misunderstanding. Case closed, right? Not even close. Because Margaret wasn't convinced. Not fully. So what? She said, turning back to him. You forgot for a while, and that turned into 40 years? There's more, he admitted. Of course there was. There's always more. She gave a dry, tired laugh. There better be. He nodded slowly. There is. And just when it feels like we're finally getting all the answers, the story tightens its grip again. Because whatever he says next, it's going to change everything. But before we go there, quick question for you. If you were Margaret, would this be enough? Would you forgive him? Or is 40 years just too long to explain away? Let me know in the comments. I'm really curious where you stand on this. Because Margaret? She's about to find out if love can survive the kind of silence that breaks most people. Margaret didn't sit down. She stayed standing, like sitting might make this too real, or worse, too forgivable. You said there's more? She reminded him. Daniel nodded slowly, his eyes drifting to the floor before finding their way back to her. When my memory started coming back, it didn't come back clean, he said. There were gaps. Confusion. I'd remember something one day and lose it the next. So you're saying you kept forgetting me? She asked, not hiding the sting. I'm saying I kept trying to remember you, he corrected gently. There's a difference. She didn't respond, but she didn't interrupt either. I tried to track you down, he continued. Old addresses, mutual friends, but everything had changed. People moved. Numbers were gone. And every time I got close to something solid. You lost it again? She asked. He gave a small nod. Something like that. Margaret exhaled slowly, pacing once across the room before stopping again. You could have come back here, she said. This house hasn't moved. I know that now, he said. But back then, I wasn't sure of anything. I didn't trust my own memory. I didn't want to show up at the wrong door and realize I had it all wrong. She shook her head, conflicted. So instead, you stayed away? I kept trying, he said. Just not in a straight line. That answer didn't satisfy her, but it didn't sound like a lie either. And then? She asked. What changed now? Daniel's expression shifted. This time, he didn't hesitate. I got sick. There it was. Simple. Heavy. Final. Margaret's stomach tightened. What kind of sick? He let out a slow breath. The kind that doesn't get better. Silence filled the room again, but this time, it wasn't sharp. It was heavy. How long? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. A few months, he said. If I'm lucky. Margaret blinked, like her mind needed a second to catch up. You're serious. I wish I wasn't. She turned away, pressing her lips together, her emotions finally catching up to her. So that's it, she said after a moment. You show up after 40 years, because you're dying? He didn't flinch. I showed up because I didn't want to die without seeing you again. That hit harder than anything else. Margaret closed her eyes briefly. All those years. All that waiting. All that silence. And now this? You don't get to just walk back in and, finish the story? She said, her voice breaking slightly. Like nothing happened? I'm not asking for that, he said quietly. I know I don't deserve that. Then what do you want, Daniel? He looked at her, not with desperation, not with expectation. Just honesty. A little time, he said. Whatever you're willing to give. That was it. No grand speech. No dramatic plea. Just time. Margaret laughed softly, shaking her head. Time, she repeated. That's ironic. He gave a faint smile. Yeah. I figured you'd say that. She walked over to the table, her fingers brushing over the old letters. 40 years of questions. 4 decades of silence. And now, a man with months left, asking for something she had already given him once before. Everything. She turned back to him. You're unbelievable, she said quietly. I've been called worse. I waited for you, she said. Do you understand that? I waited. I know, he said, his voice cracking for the first time. And I'm so sorry. The apology hung there. Late. Incomplete. But real. Margaret studied him for a long moment. Then, slowly, she pulled out a chair and sat down across from him. All right, she said. He looked up, surprised. All right? He repeated. You have your time, she said. Not because you deserve it, but because I deserve answers. And maybe, something more than an ending that never made sense. Daniel nodded, emotion thick in his throat. Thank you, he whispered. And just like that, the story didn't end. It restarted. Not as the love story they imagined at 20, but as something quieter, Smaller. Real. Days turned into moments. Moments turned into memories. No big gestures. No rewriting the past. Just two people, finally sharing the time they lost. And when the end came, it wasn't loud. Margaret sat beside him, holding his hand, just like she used to imagine all those years ago. Only now, there was no waiting left. Just goodbye. And here's the question that stays with you long after the story ends. Was it worth it? 40 years of waiting, for a few months of closure? Or is love, real love, something that doesn't measure time the way we do? If this story made you feel something, if it made you think differently about love, patience, or forgiveness, then go ahead and subscribe. Because stories like this, they don't just entertain. They remind us what really matters.